So here's another one from the Varadkar files, right? So given the context, I believe we'll scroll down to the end there because there's another couple of stories here from about Varadkar. So in July, Leo Varadkar said that he will not contest the next general election, right? So obviously he stood down and stood away from politics, from being Taoiseach or Taoiseach and from being Fine Gael party leader, right? And since then, I believe this followed shortly enough after a visit to Biden's America, right? So obviously he had a meeting with Biden or Biden's representatives or whatever the case is. And whether it was a direction given to him or whether it was just coincidental that he happened to step down after the visit over there, will, I suppose, is yet to be determined, right? And you can think one way or the other, right? And so he comes back anyway, he steps down, steps away from politics. And since then, he's, after making a few comments that I don't believe he would have made if he had stayed in the position he was in, right? But he's also made comments that I would suggest, given at the time anyway, could be seen as counter to what Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were standing for, or they could be him blowing up where the next direction for those parties were, okay? So either he was acting antagonistically in what he was saying towards Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, or he was just releasing into the public mind, the public discourse, the navigation direction, right? The navigational future for these parties. Because subsequently you see both of those parties took positions that were a little bit more antagonistic, even hostile to positions that they've held for previous years, right? So either he's directing the ship from behind the scenes, or he is just airing a more personal opinion on the professional work that he did and that is continuing to go on, right? Quote unquote professional, right? Political. But either way, the comments he's been making, not that people would need much convincing or that most people would need much convincing, because I think people would kind of agree that obviously we don't get the full picture of what goes on behind the scenes. We only get the picture of what goes on in front of this from the screens, right? But for Varadkar and people in the position that he had and still has to a degree, to be coming out saying this stuff, it's a confirmation, at least, for what a lot of people would suspect that they know or intuitively grasp anyway. And for people then who would be a little bit more hardline in their devotion to appearances, right? They would support almost totally, across many different lines of society, the positions that politicians would take, almost in near total obedience, right? They just follow whatever script is reeled off the press. So we'll have a little read here of what he's after saying, right? And it's fascinating, but also obvious enough, right, to the initiated or whatever, right? So Varadkar says, headline, less gets written down due to freedom of information laws, right? So we'll have a little read. Ireland's former Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, has revealed that in modern times, politicians and diplomats are committing less information to paper because they're mindful of freedom of information laws and want to keep the topic of certain discussions confidential, i.e. secret, right? Keep them away from, confidential from who, right? So from the people that they proclaim to represent. So the remarks were made in a recent interview on the Roasted with Mark Moriarty podcast, during which the ex-Fine Gael leader was describing what it was like to travel to America for the annual Patrick's Day White House visit to meet the US president. Asked who the Irish Taoiseach generally meets when the American delegation, or from the American delegation when his plane lands, Varadkar said that it was typically the US ambassador. Varadkar's quote here, the ambassador is going to want to talk to you and fill you in on everything that's happening, things in the program and things that they didn't want to put in writing. Yeah, he continues, because anything in writing is subject to the Freedom of Information Act, which means less gets written down than would have been the case in the past. Now, listen to the next line. You can read it there, but listen to the next line. for absolute blatant attempt at gaslighting you into and convincing you that one thing is something when it blatantly isn't, right? So he added that it was, quote, a good thing for transparency, but a bad thing for historians. So transparency obviously is, if something's transparent, you can see through it, right? Like a window, right? It's transparent. Water is semi-transparent, but it can distort as well, meaning you can look through it, right? So if meetings, uh, gatherings, reports, any of that stuff between public representatives is to be deemed transparent, it would mean that we know what was going on in those meetings, what was spoken about, right? The minutes of the meeting, all that sort of stuff. If not a televised meeting in totality. But what he's saying here, and then goes on to contradict it, and I don't believe he's a silly person, right? I believe that there's an intent behind it. It's an intent to normalize it. Okay, so he's telling you that we have public meetings, and then we have meetings that happen behind the scenes, and we have conversations that are not for public consumption. Naturally, you're going to have things like national security and all that stuff, but how often is that used and abused to just shield these politicians from conversations that the public should have absolute knowledge of, right? Because what they're doing by deciding that the public won't get to hear or see this is they're acting outside of the office that they've taken. Okay, obviously there's exceptions to the rule where things would probably need to be kept out of international scrutiny or out of public awareness, but there's an argument to be made for and against that, whether that is ever legitimate or not, right? But he's going on to tell you that, yeah, look, we keep secrets essentially, but that's a good thing for transparency. It's a good thing for the people to know that we keep secrets, because that allows them to understand more about what the job is that we're doing based on the knowledge that we don't share with them. They're therefore more knowledgeable about the situation that's going on. The more we keep from them, the better informed they are, right? This is classic doublespeak, George Orwell stuff, right? But what he's doing here is attempting to normalize things. So I would imagine there's probably stuff that's going to drip out, and he's trying to get ahead of it here, right? That's I suppose the more negative slant you can take on this, meaning the darker potential that you can take from this, right? Because there's always a case when we don't have full working knowledge of any situation, we can read into it and follow any line of inquiry that it seems reasonable, right? Up until the point where it's proven to be non-reasonable based on more available information that he is telling you is going to be kept hidden from you or has been kept hidden from you, right? So I suppose, obviously, you would question the legitimacy of anything this fella is saying. If he's telling you, look, yeah, we keep secrets from you, we work around the laws that would allow you to attain the information that is shared with me as a public representative. We work around that law, but that's a good thing for you, right? So you can't trust anything this fella is saying, which opens the door for being able to follow any line of inquiry or any, I suppose, potential reason or potential benefit or potential goal that might be involved in him sharing these things. Okay, I would suggest that attempting to normalize secrecy, behind the doors deals, all that sort of stuff, and attempting to normalize the fact that there is information that public representatives share, receive, and engage in that should be held away from public consumption, up until the point where they're willing to skirt around the laws that should apply to public office. But he's telling you there, look, yeah, we've ways around that. Okay, so again, the curtain's pulled back a little bit for those that needed the curtain pulled back, and for those that don't, go and show this to someone. So someone that is a little bit more staunch in their defense of politics, right, and a little bit more resistant to what they might consider speculation, right? You don't really know that's what goes on. Go and show them this. Go and show this to somebody who votes Fine Gael and say, what do you think of this? Do you think it's okay that the person whose job it is to represent your views and the things that you need in the world and your life essentially, that they're openly telling you, he's openly telling you, we keep things secret from you? Do you think that's all right? would you vote for someone again knowing that? And just see what happens, right? Because for those that are, again, dyed in the wool Fine Gael, or whatever party it is, right? The parties are irrelevant. You're dealing with people, and people are either truthful or they're not, right? People are either worthy of holding public office or they're not. They're either trustworthy or they're not, or they're either deceitful or they're not. And he's telling you openly here, we're deceptive. We're not even deceptive because we're not even pretending to tell you the truth here. He's telling you outright, yeah, we keep secrets from you and we try and avoid the laws that would compel us to reveal information to the public while doing a public serving job, right? So again, make of it what you will.